Hi, I'm Jason Gorber for ThatShelf.com, and we're here to look at Dune Part 2 on 4K.
Big shelf.
Denis Villeneuve's Dune Part 2, the second part of his grand Dune saga, essentially the second half of the original Dune book, brought to screen. I got to see it a couple times in my preferred format, IMAX, digital IMAX, Laser GT IMAX. We're blessed here in Toronto to have one of the great movie theaters to actually see films like this. It looks exquisite. I don't have the technical details on it. I believe he shot the same way that he did the first film, which he shot it essentially on digital IMAX cameras and a bunch of other digital cameras. Then they made a print of it, and then they scanned that in order to get a bunch of film grain once all the CGI and all those elements are put in. So it's actually a really interesting look, and it's, for me, Christopher Nolan promise. We shot all on film. Well, they're shooting on film, then they're scanning the film, then they're doing the CGI, then they're doing it like grain removal in order to get wire removal, and then they're adding back grain in. It's all a big mess, but that's a much longer conversation about the technical side. Let's simply talk about the film itself. I mentioned it on the channel before. I enjoyed it quite a bit. I have very little invested in the actual story of Dune. This is not something that like a Star Wars or something like that. This wasn't my big grand thing. The only time I'd really read the book was when I was a teenager and immediately saw the David Lynch film. I haven't seen that since. I'm actually looking forward to finally revisiting that. But Elf is this sort of post-Lawrence Arabian at all these sort of different machinations that go in, where you have somebody that's sort of being promoted as a messianic figure, the sort of savior figure. It has all these dynamics. And one of the most infuriating things for me about it is a bunch of people are reading the film as if somehow it's pro what is taking place. It's so clearly evident that the Shani character, especially as played by Zendaya, especially as emphasized by, is completely skeptical about the whole thing. And as we've been watching Timothée Chalamet's character sort of evolve between one film and the other, it's not the good guy. This is not happy things taking place, but we're watching these mechanisms take place. That's why it'll be very interesting to see whether a third film based on Dune Messiah, where you actually get sort of a more clear articulation of that arc, and people can go back and realize maybe they were speaking a little bit too close. Maybe their knee-jerk reaction to these overt critiques of things like colonialism, saying somehow this is pro that, and completely missed the point, will be sort of sublimated. The disc itself looks beautiful. Obviously, we're lacking the sort of changing aspect ratio that we got in IMAX. That, for me, is one of the unfortunate vestiges of this type of release. IMAX, whenever there's a dream sequence, would go to full 1:4:3. It's one of the joys of seeing it on a full IMAX screen. And then to essentially a 2:2:1, 70-ish millimeter, you're getting basically a scope-like aspect ratio throughout all of this. Some of the parts, like in the Harkonnen homeworld, were shot using infrared film, so it's a very specific looking black and white with the sort of black sun going on there. It looked stunning with the laser projection. Seen here, it's a little bit more straightforward at home. The colors are exquisite, and the detail is absolutely amazing on the 4K. But yeah, you're lacking a little bit of the sort of the enormity of the image really lent itself to finding these sort of subtle gradations of the colors of the sand and stuff like that as they're shooting in places like Jordan, Abu Dhabi, and the like. There's about an hour of extra features on here, creating the Fremen world, Chakobsa, which is the language, training, worm riding deeper than the desert, sounds of Dune, and more. In other words, you have these sort of vignettes, these little EPKs that are a little bit more detailed than the EPK. You have people like Hans Zimmer talking that he was still sending music 6 months after the release of Dune 1 to Denis, before they even had the green light to go ahead with Dune Part 2. He was sort of still living in that world. It's nice little bits like that. You have really excellent footage, actually, of Denis Villeneuve and his partner, who serves as both producer and second unit. His partner in real life and his partner as filmmaker, elevating their contributions together as they sort of share off certain directorial duties. It's really nice to see. Look, the disc is referenced, the audio is exquisite, and yet, now that both of them are out, maybe we gotta wait for a third one, if there's gonna be a third one, given the fact that this made almost $1 billion, one can hope. If Denis has the the ability to gear himself up and do it again, and sort of round this off into a sort of a Paul trilogy. But even if that doesn't happen, I would love to see a sort of more detailed, almost a Lord of the Rings like set, the stuff that Peter Jackson used to do. I know the physical media doesn't quite have the same budget behind it the way that did. People are just used to so much more used to streaming, but this is definitely the series of films that I would love to see much more in-depth, full commentaries, a look behind all the elements of the actual construction, incredible sets, about what it's like to actually delve into some of these more nuanced characteristics of the storyline and get that all on record. And I would absolutely adore to see that. Maybe even Criterion. I mean, once upon a time, Criterion would do releases similar to this, and actually sort of provide an elevated platform for things like Armageddon. God, if Michael Bay could be on Criterion, certainly Denis Villeneuve's filmography, almost all of it, actually deserves to be on that grand mark. Anyway, there's our quick look of Dune Part 2. Unsurprisingly, anybody who actually owns a 4K player demands to have this. Make sure you calibrate your television. I watched this both on OLED and my projector. The projector looked good, nice and big. The OLED obviously kicked it out of the water in terms of the actual color rate production. It's a stunning, stunning disc, and one to absolutely cherish as part of your collection. So that's our look at Dune Part 2. Thanks so much for watching. Please subscribe, follow us on social media. We will see you next video. All the best. Take care.
Thanks, Shelf.